Now this question says use a graphing calculator. We're going to look at how we would do it without a graphing calculator because I know not all of you have graphing calculators. But no matter if you use a graphing calculator or not, this is a line, and in order to graph lines, you need to have it in y equals mx plus b form. So the very first thing we're going to need to do is rearrange this to get y by itself on one side. So I'm going to move the 2x and the 11 over to the other side. If I wanted to get the y by itself, the next thing I would need to do is divide everything by -3. I'm going to make a mistake in the next line. You don't write it down yet. I just want you to tell me where my mistake is. Okay? So I'm going to divide everything by 3. All right. There we go. There is a mistake in there. If you see it right away, don't blurt it out. Have a look. Uh-oh. All right, some ideas. You have to flip the sign. Yes, because you divided by a negative, have to flip the sign. Is the rest okay? Yeah? Negative divided by negative, that'll be, yeah, the rest is okay. So if you wanted to graph this, actually right now, this is hard to graph without a calculator because we have lots of decimals. It's not impossible. You could start with your y-intercept being 11 over 3, which is between what two numbers? 3 and 4. You could use your slope of 2 over 3, means that you would have to go up to and over 3 to find another point. And would I draw a dotted line or a solid line for this one? Dotted, because it doesn't have the equal sign. And would I shade above or below? Okay, go purple this time. It is y is less than, so you take any point and go down below, so the shading would be below. Very nice. Very nice shading. Now on your graphing calculator, you would have to get to this step anyways to be able to graph it. Y is less than 2/3 x plus 11/3. So we're going to go to our graphing calculator and clear everything else that might be in there. I'm going to make fancy, exactly like it looks like. So 2/3 x plus 11 over 3. The other thing you can do with your graphing calculator, okay? Now, one thing you can do is you can go to this part and push enter, and underneath on the line, you can change it so that it shades below. So that's one thing you can do. So if I choose that and hit OK, and now graph my line, it'll shade it below just like my equation was.
How did you get to shade below?
So I got it to shade below on the y equals by going and arrowing over to where the line was and pushing enter. On some of the older calculators, every time you push enter, it changes. On the newer calculators, it lets you choose what kind of line you would like to do. Dotted, solid, thick solid, shade above, or shade below. So I chose to shade below.
This says invalid DIM.
Yeah, I got an error.
So push your zoom button to make sure you're zoom 6 to get to standard window.
No, but like
The other thing that's sometimes helpful in these is if you go to apps, oh, mine's not on here anymore, but some of you under your apps might have a program called Inequals. Hit the apps button. If you have the inequality app and you turn it on, it actually lets you change things to be less than or greater than. Just push enter. I also want to remind you that another way that you can graph your line, I graph the line by changing to y equals mx plus b and using my y-intercept and my slope. Another way to graph your line is just with a table of values. And in fact, in this situation, there are some easy values that you could plug in that could help you solve. For example, if I put in 1 for y, what would x have to be to make it equal to 0? If I put in 1 for y, and I made it equal to 0, what would x be? This would be 8, move it over, -8, divide by 2, -4. So I could have started with a nice point like -4 comma 1, and then used my slope, rise of 2, run of 3, found another nice point, -1 comma 3, and then you could draw your line through those points as well. I looked at the numbers, okay? I knew that I wanted this to be an even number, so I chose 1 for y. -3 plus 11 makes 8. And then I knew it would divide nicely by 2. So just some mental math, thinking about it. Sometimes you try numbers and find out they're fractions, and then you would try a number that isn't a fraction. Sometimes you might have to try more than one number. Okay, your questions for practice on this one are 6, 8, and 13. And in fact, the next question we're going to do is 13a together. So in 13, it says graph each inequality for the given restrictions on one variable. So in this one, we have to graph y is greater than -3x plus 4. So if I was drawing that, I would have a y-intercept at 4. And a slope of -3, meaning that I would go down 3 over 1, down 3 over 1. And it would be a dotted line. And the shading for this one, would it be above or would it be below? For y is greater than -3x plus 4. It would be above. So you take any point and think above that point. I'm just going to shade it really lightly right now. So that would be above, right? You take any point and shade up from it. It would be shaded in that section. But we need to shade it above, and there's some additional restrictions. The additional restrictions say x has to be bigger than 0. This blue line is the line x equals 0. Which part would I shade if I wanted to shade all the x values bigger than 0? To the right. So we'll also need to shade everything to the right. It also says that y has to be bigger than 0. I'll do that one in red. Here's the line y equals 0, and we need to shade everything above that. So when we have three inequalities like this one, your final answer has to be the shading for all three combined. Can you see that your shading for all three combined would be here, then here, then here? It had to be to the right of x equals 0. It had to be above the green one, and it had to be above the red one. The only part that would shade all three of those sections is that purple section. So in question 13, not only do they get you to graph the line and think about where it would be shaded, but they add some extra values as well.